Have you ever hit confirm on a Disney trip and then immediately thought, wait, what did I just do? Because that was me this week. We weren't even sure if we were going to get down to Disney World at all, and then boom, we're booked for next month. And not just at any resort, but one that we've never stayed at before. In this episode, I'm walking you through the exact steps I'm taking to prep for this last-minute Disney trip, from what I'm skipping completely to how I'm reworking my list of must-dos to what planning looks like when you still want the trip to feel intentional, but you also only have less than 30 days to plan everything. We're going to be talking about summer crowds, Skyliner strategy, and the balancing act of me on vacation with my kids and also working on content for my business, which includes the podcast that you're listening to right now. So if you've ever wondered how I actually plan my own Disney trips, or you found yourself tempted by maybe booking a last minute deal and aren't sure if you can pull it off in time, this episode is for you. Hello, and welcome to the Laid Back Magic Way podcast. I'm your host, Dana Stanley, creator of Laid Back Magic. As a mom of 3, I know how tough it can be to find time to plan a Disney World trip that doesn't leave you feeling stressed or overwhelmed. That's why I'm here, to help moms like you create Disney vacations that feel even better than they look on paper. Here, we're not chasing perfection, but creating our next favorite memories. So whether you're brand new to Disney or looking to go deeper into the details, this podcast is your go-to for simple tips, mindset shifts, real-life trip recaps, and expert insights to make your trip magical and manageable. New episodes drop every Monday, so be sure to subscribe so you never miss a moment. Okay, let's dive in. We are officially booked for Disney World, and after putting off for months waiting for the perfect resort with the perfect dates, it ended up being a really last-minute trip for next month. There were just so many things that we were working around, especially with like a busy summer, and finally pulled the trigger when there was a 1-bedroom available at Riviera for the perfect dates that I wanted. I really wanted a resort that was new to us for this trip. You guys know I'm a boardwalk fan, but after our last trip, I was really craving something just different, even if it wasn't my favorite or perfect. I was really just craving something different and kind of like something to remember each trip by different things. I feel like when you stay at the same resort over and over, all the trips can kind of start to run together. Whereas you can like reference like the time that we stayed at the Poly or the boardwalk, things like that. So the Riviera just made sense. Now that we have 3 kids, we can definitely still do a studio, but a 1-bedroom is always really nice. I wish I could say that this was my first last minute trip that's like under 60 days, but this has been kind of the normal thing with the exception of when we visit with our extended family that we plan many, many months in advance. But when it's just the 5 of us, it ends up being just like when the stars align, if we can get like a room or rental between flights and our schedules. So I want to chat about what I'm doing for this trip in particular. Some things I would do on every trip anyway, but specifically when it comes to last minute trips like this. But first, here's what I'm not doing. I'm not booking anything right away. Like I'm not rushing to rent a stroller and book dining reservations and like order clothes. I am not rushing to do anything because I know that there are certain things that have to happen first. And it doesn't matter if I'm planning a year out or a month out. And I'm not stressing about the fact that I missed my dining day. This is something that used to stress me out, and I put a lot of emphasis on the day that my dining reservations opened. So if you don't already know, for table service, sit-down restaurants in Disney World, you'll need a reservation, and those open up 60 days at 6 a.m. And normally, I would be up, ready to go with my dining reservations in order of priorities, very strategic, and I'd have backups and all of those things. And I know the instinct when you're feeling behind is to like immediately go into the app and hop into dining reservations and start booking for places that maybe are hard to get and you feel behind and you think that there's going to be nothing left. But I've learned the hard way that booking anything before I really know what parks I'll be in and when is kind of just like a recipe for disaster, getting ahead of yourself. So the first thing I did after I hit book was actually print out 2 things from my own planning course, Laid Back Magic, my intention journal and my checklist. And the checklist actually felt good because it's something that's normally maybe over 6 months. And I was just able to like check, check, check. Like I did all of these things. But I just want to make sure that I'm not missing anything because the planning timeline is so condensed now. The journal is wonderful for any trip. And you can actually grab that for free at laidbackmagicway.com/journal. I'll leave a link for you in the show notes. But I really wanted to fill this out right away because even though I've made it my job around Disney World, we don't go often enough that I could just skip this step. We're not going every week. We're not local. We're not even going every month. So it's still very special when we get to go. And I feel like, I don't know if it's my age or because I'm done having more kids, I'm like more nostalgic than ever about actually getting to be in Disney with my kids while they're little. And I love Disney World, obviously. So I want to do everything and all the new things that we haven't seen. And there's a lot of new stuff this trip. I've been keeping like a general Google Doc of things I want to hit on our next trip. And when I looked at it recently, it was like 16 things. And that is not going to happen. This is a 5-day trip. 16 new things I know are not going to work. So filling out this journal reminded me that yes, I do need to bring back some content for work, but I can also prioritize what we want to do first, and then I'll work backwards from there and making content around things that I already know we want to do, not the other way around. I started eliminating that list pretty quickly once I talked to the kids, and this is the next thing that I did right away. Because one of the downsides of being so last minute or having less time to plan is that there isn't as long of like a hype period for the kids. Sometimes you book something, a year, maybe a little less away, and the kids are pumped that entire time. I could also see this having its downsides too, depending on how you look at it. But in our case, I told the girls immediately, like within 10 minutes of the room being booked. This isn't always on the list. I'm not usually like in a rush to tell them, but it's actually making a huge difference on this trip in particular because it's surprising like what your kids will say, what they don't care about specifically, and that's making it really easy for me to just cross things off the list. I feel like sometimes you get a lot of information from them by like the questions that they ask you too. When I told them that we were going to Disney and I said we were staying at a new resort, my daughter immediately said, "Oh, is it the one with the Moana pool?" And I know she saw that from watching videos of the Poly Tower when it opened. So that was like a good thing to kind of just get ahead of like, hey, no, we are not going there. There is no, Moana pool. But, and then I could tell her of like all the exciting things about the Riviera that I think she will like. If you haven't been to Disney World yet and your kids don't know what to expect, that actually makes it a lot easier because they don't really have expectations or know what to expect at all. But I would watch some YouTube videos with them ahead of time and see what kind of pops up. Maybe do like a walkthrough and then see what they say or what they ask about. And then you could show them like very specific character meals or pools and see what kind of makes them glaze over or what makes them excited. On our last trip to the boardwalk, it was during the media previews of the new cake bake shop. So the girls saw the outside with all the lights and the menus, and it's very pretty. So they happened to be very interested in eating there, but they had never seen the inside. So I went on YouTube and I put in cake bake shop reviews and things like that so that the girls could see the insides. Because I don't know how my girls feel sometimes about things that are like very girly. They can go either way. It's a very like feminine, a little bit more fancy, upscale place, feeling like everything has glitter on it. And I was surprised. They were both completely into it. They're pumped about the cake, and I'm pumped about the peanut butter mousse pie. That's on my list. So that was like a good thing to just bring up because otherwise I don't know if I would have known that they were into that or cared about that, and I might have taken it off the list. I feel like watching any videos and like resort walkthroughs are very low effort ways to help your kids feel excited and also set the expectations ahead of time so they're not like surprised by anything. This was the type of trip where I had the perfect chance to make it a surprise. Like the girls didn't know. It was kind of just like out of the blue. And I have done that in the past with my oldest where we woke her up and put her in the car for school and we drove to the airport instead. And it was very fun. but I realized that it wasn't for me. I feel like it's more fun for them to know that we're going. That's just how I felt. It was almost like when you build something up of this is going to be this epic surprise. And then they just have so many questions and they need time to process it. And I remember coming home and saying to my husband, I don't think I want to do a surprise to Disney again. I'm glad we did it and it was really fun, but it feels more fun to me not surprising them. Maybe I could tell them in a fun way, but not the waking up and going to Disney type surprise, if that makes sense. I thought about it though. I did. I mentioned that this resort is new to me. And again, that's the Riviera. I think of this as Boardwalk's neighbor, but the downside for me is that there's nowhere walkable outside of Caribbean Beach next door. Because of this, once I had my resort reservation linked to my account and everything was ready to go, I started looking at the map of this resort to get familiar. I had already looked and seen the floor plan before we booked, obviously, but there were a lot of variables, especially because it's somewhere I haven't been. And the biggest thing is the Skyliner station. I have never stayed at a resort that is on the Skyliner route, which means for Hollywood Studios and Epcot, I will not be able to walk, which is going to be kind of a shocker to me because I'm just used to being able to walk. And there's also no buses to those parks. You have to take the Skyliner. I visited the Riviera before and used the Skyliner to get there, but I have not depended on it so much for getting to and from Epcot and Hollywood Studios. And that story takes a little bit of a turn when I tell you that I am terrified of heights. And the first and last time I took a ride on the Skyliner, I cried like a little girl. So it's definitely something that's been on my mind. I keep telling myself that I'm going to be okay and I can suck it up. But I do want the whole experience of the Skyliner to be as stress-free as possible. So the biggest thing I have to think about is that our double stroller is the Zoe twin and it's a side-by-side double, which means it's going to have to get folded up for the Skyliner. Single strollers and other doubles that are front and back can just be wheeled right on. So this is something I'm kind of going back and forth and thinking about it more than any other trip, is considering if I actually maybe want to try to rent a different kind of stroller so we don't have to collapse it. Will I be taking the Skyliner that much that it will be annoying having to take the two kids out and collapse my double versus renting something else and we can just push it on? That's why I know sketching out my trip is so important before I do anything and really slow down, because maybe we end up Ubering to different places more, or we're going to Magic Kingdom more than we think. Maybe we're not even going to Hollywood Studios, which I doubt. But there's so many variables of making these big decisions, jumping ahead and renting a stroller before thinking about it, that I really don't want to do anything until I have a bird's eye view and know exactly what my tentative plans are. And that was the next immediate thing that I did, was start sketching. I printed out my little sketch planner and started plugging in which parks were going to be more crowded on which days, and using crowd calendars that I trust, which is Thrill Data and Undercover Tourist. You can literally see spikes and dips per park, not just across even Disney World as a whole. For example, Mondays at Magic Kingdom, I know to avoid. The data says it. The ticket data says it. My own experience says it. So that's something that I'm going to sketch so that I know that we're not going to be in Magic Kingdom on Monday. Same thing, I know that Epcot on Friday, Saturday nights around the World Showcase feel really cramped and the lines for everything get really long. So I'm going to be avoiding that. There are better and worse times to go to Disney World throughout the year, and they're all going to have their pluses and minuses. I don't think that any time is a good time. And to be honest, when we're going is kind of my least favorite time because it's a little bit more crowded and it's very hot. But if you listen to my summer episode, and I'll link that in the show notes for you if you haven't, I do have some things that I won't normally do during other trips that I'll absolutely do during the summer to make it more manageable and not the worst time of year. When I know it's going to be on the busier side, I get very serious about the actual parks on which days. A lot of people ask me, when's the least crowded time to go to Disney? Or they avoid holidays altogether, which I get and totally recommend. But don't forget that the crowds can go up and down within the parks. Your trip can feel wildly different depending on what day you're going where. That's how I've been spending the last 2 or 3 mornings since this was booked, was sketch, sketch, sketch. Next, I took inventory of just kind of like the things that I have on hand and like our gear, luggage, stroller fans, things like that. This will be our 8th flight this year with the kids. So thankfully, I have everything freshly unpacked from our last vacation, if that makes sense. I kind of like mentally know where everything is at the moment. I just did like a big closet clean out, which by the way, like a real summer closet clean out feels so good. I actually like cleaned my closet, like vacuumed it and sprayed it down. It felt so good. So I made sure we were all good to go there. I don't need to bring a ton of extras. I don't need to order a bunch of mini toiletries and go hog wild with like ordering things because I'm pretty set there. And I'm glad I took inventory right away because I think our like default is to just like go on Amazon and order a bunch of things. And then when you start packing, you're like, oh, I have like 2 of these sunscreens, or oh, I have 2 of these deodorants. So I always recommend like slowing down and actually compiling things that you have so you're not double ordering things. The thing that I really need to decide in the next few days is if I'm renting a stroller or not. I want to do this sooner than later. So definitely in my mind, we, worst case, have a stroller, but if I want to rent one, I want to get that done ASAP. And the last thing I did / am doing, because I haven't actually done it yet, is to do any dining or set any dining alerts. This is going to be last and not first, because you cannot make dining reservations or set alerts for dining reservations until you know where you're going to be and when. I think sometimes we just assume, okay, I'm just going to book these places I know I want to go and then kind of work around that or grab whatever time you can. And then you're like trying to put a square peg in a round hole. You're like working backwards and trying to make something fit that maybe isn't going to work around other things like the park day crowds or events or park hours, or you're like working backwards and trying to make it work. And when your dining doesn't match your park plans, it like throws everything off. And I've just learned that. So I'm waiting to do this last, and I have pretty good confidence that I'm going to get what I want anyway. So that's where we are right now. The last minute trip is booked. The room, my plans are kind of sketched out. I've taken inventory of my quote gear, and I've set my intentions from the get-go. And there's still a lot I have to figure out here, like which park days are locked in, what I'll prioritize for my content, obviously where we're going to eat. But I'm doing this the way that I teach, one step at a time, and especially in the right order. If you want to steal my checklist or the journal I mentioned, I'll link it in the show notes for you. And if you're planning a last minute trip yourself, I hope this episode was useful. Let me know how it goes. I am right in the planning boat with you. You can always DM me on Instagram. I'm at somewhere worthwhile, and I can't wait to chat with you there. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Laid Back Magic Way podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode and it was helpful for you, it would mean the world to me if you'd write a quick review. Your reviews help more moms like you find the show, and I read every single one of them. Seriously, thank you in advance. You can find me on Instagram at somewhere worthwhile, and I'd love to hear from you there. DM me if you have any questions about this episode or what you'd like to see in future ones. Until then, keep planning for your next favorite memory, and I'll see you next time.